We are talking Wolfkin from 2022. This is actually a movie from Luxembourg, spoken in the French language, originally titled Kommunioun, and Wolfkin being its kind of English language released name. Now, this is a werewolf movie of sorts. It takes a little bit of a divergent path from your kind of typical werewolf movies. So let me give you a brief plot synopsis here. It primarily focuses on a single mother called Elaine. Now, we see in the kind of prologue of the movie that she's had this kind of romantic affair with this kind of guy called Patrick, who, you know, ends up kind of getting her pregnant and then disappears. Don't you just hate it when men do that? Anyway, cut to kind of like 10 or so years later. She's now a single mother. She has this young son, Martin, who seems to be having problems at school. He seems to be almost feral. He is very aggressive, doesn't really have any friends, can't really kind of like relate to anyone. And she is really struggling both financially and mentally. So she seeks help. So she goes to Patrick's parents, who she's never kind of like really met before. And they live out in Luxembourg. And she goes to, you know, her and Martin go to this kind of massive kind of stately home owned by Patrick's parents, and they find out there's, you know, that she has this, Martin has his grandparents, he also has an uncle, the older couple's other son, and they are more than thrilled to find out they had this kind of grandson and invite Elaine and Martin to stay with them. But there seems to be secrets abound in this family, and let's just say the family are proud of their hunting traditions. So that's kind of your basic setup there. Where this story goes, you'd have to just watch it yourself. So let's discuss. This is a well-made film. You know, it's well put together, quite fresh and original for a kind of a werewolf movie. We've seen these this sort of treatment in kind of like movies, certainly with vampire societies. You know, high society, kind of like rich families, you know, aristocrats who have this kind of network and all behind the scenes. But this is, you don't really see it with werewolves. So this was an interesting kind of like twist on that kind of that take. I've got to say this movie is very well shot. Obviously, it being filmed in Luxembourg, it really benefits from the kind of the natural environment there, and this kind of like this rich greenery. There's like fantastic like forests, great architecture and things like that. You've got a compelling cast. I think all the cast here do a good job, and you know, I think one thing I liked about this movie is the way these characters have a lot of layers. You know, for example, the grandparents, they certainly have dark secrets, you might want to say, but they are genuinely invested in trying to help both Martin and Elaine, by extension, in their own way. But this kind of the way they want to do things might not necessarily be kosher with anyone else, you might say. So I like the fact that we have these kind of like complexities with the kind of the characters, and even Elaine, she's doing the best she can, but she's not the perfect parent either. The kid Martin, you know, you can't help but feel he's obviously had a tough life, considering his nature is that much different. He doesn't know what's going on, but he does come across as a little bit of a, you know, a brat sometimes. So I quite like the kind of nuances of the characters. There's also some themes here about kind of the class, the kind of the 1% versus the 99. The grandparents come from a very wealthy background. They're kind of have a very traditional kind of patriarchal kind of style kind of family where the women eat different food to the men and things like this. But, you know, obviously Elaine, she's coming from a kind of a poorer background, working mum, etc. And these guys are sort of clearly kind of super rich, although it's never really established why they're rich and how that, whatever. So that, you know, there are some interesting kind of themes, I would say, in this movie. It treats the kind of the werewolf side of stuff. It's not massively overt. Don't be expecting to see huge amounts of kind of like VFX and stuff. It's mostly kind of, you do get, there is a little bit of that, but you don't get huge amounts. It's more of just the kind of like this family want to kind of lean into their instincts, so to speak, without kind of losing control ultimately. So it's very much a story of nature versus nurture. It's a story of, you know, a mother's relationship with her son and what that kind of means and what that kind of looks like. And, you know, the themes of kind of like you're presented with something flashy and new and seemingly good, but, you know, would you give up what's already established for something seemingly better? So I like the kind of the themes that are kind of presented here. I think the acting's solid, character work is good, shot well. VFX are subtle, but they're kind of done well, outside of a little bit of wonky CGI towards the end. And overall, I think the story certainly leans more on the dramatic side, more so than the kind of like atypical horror. But there are some kind of like full-on horror scenes as well. One very memorable scene, for example, I think is quite shocking, is where the grandfather and the kind of the uncle take Martin, the young boy, out hunting, and that didn't go where I was expecting. So what doesn't work for me, there's a little minor thing, there's a little bit of wonky CGI towards the end. I didn't think it was necessary. It could have been, what you see could have been done on a practical level. It's very minor, we're talking a few seconds of footage, but it just seemed like an odd choice to have that inclusion. I think the ending, though, to be honest with you, as a whole, came up a little kind of out of nowhere. It just seemed to kind of like have this climax all of a sudden, and it didn't really have much build up until that point. It just kind of happened, and then you think, oh, that was it. I think the kind of one thing I would say, the only thing I would say acting wise, and this is maybe the more of a direction, is Elaine, when she starts to see the full effects of what her son is, seemed a little bit, didn't react quite as frantically as one would think, I would say, and she seemed to accept it a little bit too easily. But they're relatively minor quibbles, to be honest. I actually do think this movie is quite an interesting watch. You know, maybe you could say some of the characters are a little bit, you know, they're nuanced, but they still do kind of fit some cliches at the same time. But overall, I've got to say this was an enjoyable film with an interesting kind of different take on a kind of a werewolf movie. Certainly having a more of a kind of realistic and grounded kind of version of the werewolf legend, I think it was quite a good one, to be honest. So I'd probably recommend this to a degree. I'll give this one a 7 out of 10. Have you seen it? What did you think of it? Leave me a comment and I'll look forward to seeing you next time. Bye for now.